Hey guys, it's Evan. I'm throwing out papers real quick. I don't wish I could hold on to some of this stuff, but tomorrow there's this phony home inspection. This is the chaplain. He gave me this from VA. I haven't got around to it, but I've just kind of been going with everybody's in a different point in their spiritual journey, and these things work for some people. They don't really work for me. I kind of just go with the flow. I go with the wave, and I look up. I guess scriptures and stuff for what I'm going through. So I did this in a genealogy class the other day, and it says the "Do you know 20 questions about family stories?" There's a link here. Psychology Today, God help me. It's https semicolon / www period psychology today period com / us / blog / the hyphen or dash, however you call it, stories of our hyphen of hyphen our hyphen lives / 201611 / the hyphen do hyphen you hyphen know hyphen 20 hyphen questions hyphen about hyphen family hyphen stories. So there's 20 questions. First one is, do you know how your parents met? Do you know where your mother grew up? Do you know where your father grew up? Do you know where some of your grandparents grew up? Do you know where some of your grandparents met? Do you know where your parents were married? Do you know what went on when you were born? Do you know the source of your name? Do you know some things about what happened when your brothers or sisters were being born? Do you know which person in your family you look like the most? Do you know which person in the family you act like? Do you know some of the illnesses and injuries that your parents experienced when they were younger? Do you know some of the lessons that your parents learned from good or bad experiences? Do you know some things that happened to your mom or dad when they were in school? Do you know the national background of your family, such as English, German, Russian, etc.? Do you know some of the jobs your parents had when they were young? Do you know some awards that your parents received when they were young? Do you know the names of the schools your mom went to? Do you know the names of the schools your dad went to? Do you know about a relative whose face froze in a grumpy position because he or she did not smile enough? So for the first one, potentially childhood friends. My mother grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Who I know to be my dad grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin as well. Where my grandparents grew up, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Monterey, Nuevo Leon. But for the most part, they all grew up in Milwaukee. All of my parents, my grandparents. And then do I know how some of my grandparents met? I know, I'll give you the short story for my dad's mom and dad. My great grandfather was known as the Whistler. He worked on Milwaukee Railroad, and my he was driving a bus one day that my grandma rode, I think, to school or to work. And he, my grandma said she sat in the front seat and next to the driver, and the driver turned to her and said, "My son would really like you." And my grandma was like, "Get away, you weirdo! You're nuts." And my grandma said, sure enough, next time they saw, my grandfather introduced his son, my grandpa Andy, to my grandma Julia. And my grandma said from that moment, she was like, I thought this guy was a lunatic. But she said that her and my grandpa hit it off and they fell in love and they went to Milwaukee courthouse and got married and had a bunch of kids. And my grandma and grandpa, that's a whole other story. That wasn't as simple as my grandpa Andy and my grandma Julia. My grandpa Varisto, my grandma Tencha, they were both in relationships when they met. And my grandpa was dating a cross-eyed girl, and my grandma was dating I don't know how you say, they say frutero, so she was dating like a man who sold a fruit vendor. She was dating a fruit vendor, and my grandma was super poor, and my grandfather was working at his aunt and uncle's shop that was like two houses down from my grandma's. And my grandpa said, he felt bad because there was a really, really poor girl who he noticed her favorite cookies were the coffee cookies, and she didn't have much money other than what she went there for. So my grandpa went over the counter, got the coffee cookies, brought them back. I've been in that shop plenty of times, and it never changed. So I knew exactly like how he went over the counter, on what side of the counter he went over to get the cookies and come back to the front, and he gave her the cookies. And from that moment on, like they knew about each other, and I guess that's how the connection started. And the story goes that my grandpa started to get jealous because he found out about her that she was dating a fruit vendor. And my grandpa was very wealthy, came from a very wealthy family, very intelligent, played American football in Mexico when American football wasn't even a thing. And my grandmother started to find out about him and like who he was and things about like that. And then my grandma started to become very jealous because my grandma was like, I may be poor, but he's dating. She was like, I'm poor, but I'm beautiful, and he's dating a wealthy girl that's cross-eyed. So it was just strange. Like I don't know. I think it was strange how like they both had these feelings, like the same feelings, and they just never told each other. I don't know. It just built up, built up, built up for some time, and I think my grandfather just kind of like had enough, and he asked my grandpa, my great grandpa Mado. He's like, hey, like I want to date your daughter, and my grandpa was like, okay. Great grandpa was okay. So I think they just like really, I don't know. It was kind of like one of those whirls, like where they were both whirling around each other. Like they both really liked each other, but they were frustrated because they were with other people. And then finally, like my grandpa just was like, "I'm over this." Like, and they just ended the relationships and started dating each other. And after that, they got married in what was one of the largest churches in Monterrey, Mexico. Um, they got married very young, super young, in the super large. It's probably, well, I'm sure maybe not now, but at the time it was the largest church in Monterrey, probably the largest and the oldest church. It looks like a triangle. The church is like in the shape of a triangle, and I think that my great grandparents on my dad's side, I think they took it very well. My grandfather was always super kind, intelligent, polite, and I think that it was pretty like everybody was happy. I don't think my grandfather, he was super tough. My great grandpa, he was not a man to really mess around with. Mm, my great grandfather, he raised like six kids by himself, and he lived till he was 93 years old, and he was not a man to be messed with at all. Like this guy was not someone to mess around with. And he gave my grandpa permission to date his daughter, and then that was it. That's how we all came into this world, really. But I think it's just funny how, I don't know, like they were both expressing like just this animosity towards the people they were dating. Like my grandma could not stand that he was dating a girl. It's just weird. The dynamic in that is so weird. Like my grandpa was super rich, my grandma was super poor, and my grandpa was getting frustrated that she was dating like nothing but a loser fruit vendor, and my grandma was angry because he was dating like a wealthy girl, but she was cross-eyed and ugly, according to my grandma. My grandma was like, "I'm poor, but I'm beautiful," and he's dating a rich, cross-eyed girl, ugly girl. So that was her frustration, and my grandpa's frustration was like, he's rich and he's very educated, goes to university, goes to school, college, has jobs, and even took a summer job with his aunt and uncle, and she's over here like she would rather be with the fruit vendor. So that was like a huge thing for both of them. They were both losing their minds, and then finally, like, they ended up with each other. So, yep, we always give my grandma a hard time saying that if she would have stayed with the fruit vendor, we would have all been fruit. We would have all been oranges. I don't know. It sounds funnier in Spanish, I guess. But like we said, if she would have stayed with the Naranjero, that we would have all been Naranjeros. Like we would all be like basically like orange citrus vendors or something like that. Mm. Do I know where my parents were married? In Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Potentially, I don't know, but I'm almost positive my mom married my dad there. They were separated, I think, before I was born. Mm. Do I know what went on when I was being born? No. I've asked my mom, she won't tell me. Do you know the source of your name? My grandfather, Evaristo Cortez Ruiz. He told me every day not to remember where I came from. He taught me that Cortez comes from the Spanish Cortez and how the Spanish conquistadors, how they just admired gold. And then Ruiz comes from my great grandfather Rogelio. My great grandmother Senorina, she was, it's Zenorina. She was Cortez. My great grandmother had super red hair, like very orange red hair. That's probably where I get all my orange beard hair from. She had like a full head of just orange red hair. Mm, do I know some of the things about what happened when my brothers and sisters were born? No, I'm an only child. I have only child syndrome. Do you know which person in your family looked like the most? I would say I look the most like my grandma Julia, but there are a lot of things I have with my grandpa. Like my grandpa, I don't think anybody really has like freckles like my grandpa had. I saw this guy at church, Cameron. He looks like if I were in a time machine and I was looking at my grandpa, Cameron looks just like my grandpa. It's weird. Like I saw him, and like if you would add like maybe 10 years to Cameron, and like thicker hair, like thicker, bigger hair, that would be me looking up at my grandpa when he was raising me. It was weird when I saw Cameron like face to face. I was like, this is weird. It's like if I'm almost like if I turn back the hands of time and I'm looking straight at my grandpa. It was crazy. Like I just saw the freckles on his face, and I just thought about the freckles that my grandfather had. I mean, we can't really tell I'm all torn up now, but I have like small freckles, but not like Cameron. Cameron, I was looking at him. There are things about my grandfather. See, everybody on my mom's side of the family, everybody says I look like my grandpa, but they've never seen my my dad's mom. If they were to know and see my dad's mom, then they probably would say I look like my grandma Julia. But I mean, I know my grandma Julia. I know like I look just like her, but I think like there are certain things like my hands. Like when I look at my hands, I just see my grandpa, and when I look at my toes, I see my grandpa. I think sometimes when I see my back, sometimes I see my grandpa too. But when I see my grandpa the most is probably like in my eyebrows. My grandpa has super thick eyebrows, and my smile, like right here, in my hands for sure, and in my toes. So I'd say I look like my grandma Julie and my grandpa Varisto. Do you know which person in the family you act like the most? My grandpa Varisto. Do you know some of the illnesses and injuries your parents experienced when they were younger? No. Do you know some of the lessons that your parents learned from good or bad experience? No. Do you know some things that happened to your mom or dad when they were in school? No. Do I know the national background of my family? I put USA. I put America. Do you know some of the jobs your parents had when they were young? My mom worked at Marble Slab. She worked for the Hyatt Brothers, which now modern day they call Hyatt Hotels. And Papa Do's. She worked retail, Jamboree Limited, to Janie Jack. Oh, my dad, all I've ever known about him is that he's worked at factories in Milwaukee. I think during COVID he worked at a toilet paper factory, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know some awards that your parents received when they were young? No. My dad was a Boy Scout, something like that. Do you know the names of the schools your mom went to? No. Wisconsin and Texas, Milwaukee and Houston. My mom went to school. My dad went to school in Milwaukee. And do you know the names of school your dad went to? No. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Do you know about a relative whose face froze as kids? My sister. She's in the other room. But these are just like notes that I wrote. One of the questions was like, what would you leave or about yourself or something? And I put my coin collection, the 5 stories every family should know. 1, the love story. 2, the resilience story. I put Starbucks in Austin, Texas, cyber rodeo badge, and vaccine card. Well, the resilience story starts there. Mm, I got a phone call when I went back like an idiot when I went back to Austin from some guy. He was like, I'm with the whistleblower department. Can you give me the number to your HR? Well, that's where it all starts. 3, the value story. I would say the values and the origin story. For the value story, I put Linda. And for the origin story, I put Judd. Like, I think Miss Linda taught me what success really is, how to set not just myself up for success, but make a way to set up others for success and to give everyone that opportunity. And I think that Judd taught me what my origin story is because Judd would always tell us, you guys sitting in this room, you guys are my legacy. And I think that it takes somebody to understand their own selves, like the origin of where they come from, and to really be able to transpire those words and know, like, when we as students or as young men who had really shitty lives and were escaping those through learning how to build race engines had no idea about life, how it worked. He said, to hell with it. If you don't know life, how it works, that's, you're not in any other boat that somebody else isn't already in. But what we can do is learn to build these engines by hand and do everything that we can. And when we learn that, that's something that, yes, the world will call us crazy for, but that's something that they can never take away from us. And he would always tell us, you guys are my legacy. Every one of you in this room, you are my legacy, what I leave behind. And for my origin story, that's why I put Judd. I think that that is my origin story. That is, for me, I've always said That's the first time I ever fell in love with anything in my life. The first time I ever heard my first Ellis engine rev. I have never heard anything like that ever before in my life, and I never will. But I know that in my mind that I can always go back to that rev, the very first rev that tore my heart out and whammed it on the floor. I was like, this is love for me. I I will never. I can replay that moment in my mind, and it just heals me. Like, I'll never forget that moment. That engine fired up, and my heart just came out my chest, and just I felt like it came out my chest and splat on the floor. That's how powerful this engine was. And I was like, whoa. Like, I have been able to learn and achieve with my own two hands how to build this from nothing. And I never looked back. I never wanted to, and I never did. I studied and studied and studied and studied and studied. And even when I went to Tesla, I didn't stop studying. I would outshine engineers that had been there and said, I'm a level something so and so engineer. And I would outshine them, and they got pissed off, and I don't care. Like, you should have gone to trade school then. You should have learned how to build real engines instead of twiddling your thumbs, messing around at frat parties or whatever it was you were doing, because you weren't doing what I was doing, that's for sure. And the identity story. Hmm. I thought about the calibration logo where it said calibration still in progress. I think for me that have I suffered in a way nobody else should ever? Yes. But I think for me that identity story is being who I am, true to myself now, and being able to have that peace and knowing that I did not compromise myself. If it, trust me, my life would be so much easier if I would have just bent over and compromised when I was in that environment. If I would have just compromised and conformed, I would spare myself the homelessness, the loss that I've been through. That's the easy way out. But I didn't conform. And then lots of copies. So that's what they were telling us. Lots of copies. LOCKSS. Lots of copies keep stuff safe. 321 method. Offsite storage location copies. Types of media. Oral history. And HERODOTUS is what I wrote down. Alright, cool. Peace out. I gotta go cut the grass. Oh, wait. Before I cut that out, I have these coupons. I didn't go through them. Oof, well, I'll throw these away, and then I'm going to throw all this away. I'm just gonna have to make a new calendar. Alright. Catch you guys later.